I think it's Mike Tyson who's given credit for coming up with the phrase, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, my plan's to learn how to take punches as part of my regular training. Hi there, thanks for joining me for this month's vlog, which is a bit of a continuation from last month where I was talking about this street sport argument that still goes on and on. One thing is for certain, that whether you're training for either of those or both of those or anything really, if you get into some sort of physical confrontation, whatever the context, chances are you're going to get hit at some point, particularly the longer it goes on. So this really needs to be something that you address in your training. That's obvious, surely, you'd say. Well, you would like to think so, but when you look across the internet again, you see people saying things like, oh yeah, but the classics say, the opponent moves and then I move first. Or yeah, if someone comes into me, I'm going to shatter his kneecap with a kick and then do X, Y and Z. So, okay, maybe, you know, there is a lot to be said for if you're in some sort of physical confrontation outside of sports, you want to cut it down quick. The longer anything goes on, potentially the more dangerous it can become. And yeah, I know of at least 2 examples where a sort of kick to the knee has worked in the context of what was going on. However, in both of those cases, the person who did that also knew how to take a punch, so if that hadn't have worked, and I'm sure there are cases where that hasn't worked as well, they were prepared for what was coming next. Of course, this is something we do a lot of in Systema, this type of work, and as much as possible we try and work with contact. That might be at different speeds, at different levels of intensity, different depths of strike, but really, I would say 99% of the time we're actually working with physical contact, even if it's just a touch. This is so important for checking your timing, for checking your distance and everything else. And I do know of self-defense schools where they train without contact. Ironically enough, they pick up way more injuries than we do. There could be several reasons for that. I suspect one of them is that because there's no contact, people aren't really learning to deal with impact. So if they get hit accidentally, they've got no mechanism to cope with it. The other aspect of this you sometimes see in training is the idea of just suck it up, tough it out. You know, people stand there and the other guy hits, and you're just supposed to tough it out. It's this kind of alpha male nonsense, being tough, being hard. You know, we can all be tough and we can all be fragile. So it's very important that you approach this in an intelligent way. And again, in Systema, there's a whole range of progressive drills from working with just that contact or the push all the way through to taking deeper strikes, and then putting that as well into different drills, different types of sparring, different types of testing, because it's one thing to take a punch when you can get yourself ready and you know you can see it's coming. Once you get to that stage, then try doing the same thing but closing your eyes. Then you find that's a different thing again. Then of course you've got to put that into your movement as well. One of the beauties of this method is that the person who's doing the punching is developing their punches or kicks or whatever it is as well. So we get this nice double effect. Something else that is an important aspect of Systema training, both people should be getting benefit from the drill, from the exercise, from the situation. Weighed against that are people who say this is all too dangerous. It's too dangerous to practice defending against kicks on the floor. It's way too dangerous to train even with a rubber knife, etc, etc, etc. Well, again, what that generally tells me is they don't have a method for dealing with that particular type of attack, because again, we can have a progression of drills, a progression of exercises that gradually build you up. No one's ever working full contact, all out, in any type of training situation. Obviously with some aspects of testing you can approach that, but there's a certain level beyond which training is a fight. But here's the thing again, the better people learn to take impact, whether that's through punches, whether through that's being thrown and they know how to fall properly and all the rest of it, then the more intense your sparring and your work can be. If someone comes in new and they haven't got a clue on how to fall, first lesson, I'm not going to sweep their feet away and throw them down to the floor, probably break their wrists, you know, they could injure themselves in some way. Of course you don't do that, you work with people gently and slowly, you teach them how to absorb the impact of the fall, how to roll, how to use the shoulders, all that kind of stuff. The better they become with that, then yes, eventually at some point we're going to be chucking each other around with abandon. Even that people say is not safe because we don't use mats and all the rest of it. Well, I can only say in 25 years of doing this stuff, I've seen 2 injuries, both of which were caused by people trying to go outside the bounds of the drill, and in fact they injured themselves and not someone else, thankfully. So we always balance intensity with safety to a large degree. But here's the thing with that as well. One thing you find when you start working with impacts, particularly the strikes, is of course there's a physical element to it. Do you relax to absorb the punch? Do you bounce it out? But primarily the work is psychological, because even taking that kind of hit in the face, thank you Matt, there's a psychological element as much as anyone else. And I'm sure a lot of you will have seen this. Someone who's never taken a hit in their life, doesn't matter who they are or what they've done or what their grade is or anything else, if they've never actually been hit, then that saying is right. Bang, they get hit in the face and most people go, oh, what just happened there? There's even an outrage that they've been hit, and it might not be a particularly hard hit. I'm sure we all know the value of a slap to the face and the effect that can have as well. So as much as you're working on the physical aspect, you're very much working on that psychological aspect as well, how to manage your nervous system. And this is where this work extends over into our health training as well. Personally, I don't really like pigeonholing training because Systema is not a style, it's a method of movement and everything else, it's an operating system. Then you should be able to apply it to anything you do for any reason. Might be sports, you know, playing tennis, whatever it is. So in our health classes, we talk about impact management as well. Now, we're not punching each other in the face as such, but we might be pushing people with the stick or just with the hand, just to help them loosen the shoulders. And one thing we certainly do is teach people how to manage falls. In fact, I've got a workshop this coming Sunday which is phase 1 of fall management. We have people starting off on the floor and they begin to learn the process of how to move on the floor, how to get up, and how to lessen any impact of falling. So this is very important work as well, because the other thing is life will give us a punch every day, right? Something's going to happen on pretty much a daily basis. Might be something quite small, might be your car doesn't start in the morning, I had that a couple of weeks ago, all the way through to, well, the most horrible things you can think of. So learning to deal with that kind of impact is equally important, in fact I'd say even more important than learning how to take a punch to the face. And as I say, the beauty of it is it's all the same underlying principles, whether that's physical or psychological. And of course one of the main components of that is our breathing, which brings me on to a question. I spoke a couple of months back about when you punch, yes, you exhale on the punch, but it's also good to learn to inhale on the punch, because obviously you never know at what point in the breathing cycle you're going to be when you have to do something. And a question came in, how do you develop this? Well, the start point is, first of all, when you're doing your punches, just try and make it continuous. So if you're doing your pad work and you've got your figure 8 work going, just inhale, exhale. We certainly don't want to be like this very mechanical sort of thing, but you get your flow going and you know, you just let the breathing work, and the punch will land where it may, because the power from your punch comes largely from the movement. Okay, so if you've got that good flow and good relaxed movement working, then the breathing matters in terms of you need to be breathing, but whether you exhale or inhale on the punch is not so important. That's the first thing. The second thing is you can start building this into all your exercises. So we have the push-up, the sit-up, the squat, etc, etc. I'll just demonstrate quickly with the press-up. Again, it's a very simple idea, but this is how you put this in your exercises, and then you can start extrapolating that into your work as well. So our usual procedure to start with the press-ups is we inhale down and we exhale up. The two are working together, the breathing starts, the movement follows. In other words, I'm exerting on the exhale. However, we can of course reverse that. So now I exhale going down, and inhale coming up. And of course the other option we have is to hold the breath. So I might hold on an inhale. And of course I can do the same on the exhale as well. So of course when you practice this and then put it into your other work, this develops the ability to exert on the exhale, to exert on the inhale. Also importantly, to be able to move and function when you have no breath. You work on an exhale and hold, you work on an inhale and hold, and so on, across all the exercises and most of the drills as well. You know, it could be you take a hit, you get winded, it could be something takes you by surprise, you get that moment of shock and you freeze. Being able to work with nothing in the tank, so to speak, then becomes very important. It breaks us out of that freeze reaction, because we always want to respond to something rather than react. So work inhale, exhale, work exhale, inhale, work inhale, hold, work exhale, hold. Again, there's a whole range of progressive drills for doing this across all your main exercises, and as I mentioned, across a lot of the drills as well. So there we go. As much as you can, incorporate some aspects of learning still with impact in your training on all those different levels that I've spoken about. Also, if you find that you're doing your training and you're getting injured a lot, then maybe review how you're training as well. If you can understand your nervous system and your body and the levels of tension and relaxation, you can go a long way to mitigate and prevent any damage, particularly if you know how to deal with the impact of hits or of being thrown to the floor. And hopefully that breathing tip will help as well. If you do have any more questions on that, let me know. And of course, if you want access to all our detailed instructional content, click the join button below. That will take you to all the details about our member channel. We're just working on this series on integration at the moment, how to integrate the whole body into a strike. So please do check that out. And if you haven't already, please do like, share and subscribe. Pleased to say we've got over 10,000 subscribers now to the channel. So thanks very much for joining. As always, any comments, questions or suggestions, let me know. I'll see you next time.